Good evening. Today is Monday, October 24, 2022, and this is the 121st episode of New Paradigms. I'm your host, Sargis Sangari. My guest today is Mayor George Van Dusen of Skokie Village here in Chicago, in Illinois, where my family and I have actually resided since August of 2014. Mayor Van Dusen and his wife Susan have also lived in Skokie since 1974. Their children, now adults, have all been educated here in the Skokie public school systems, as are my family members, my children, who are currently attending either the public schools and or college here in Skokie. The mayor's children have also resided in Skokie, along with the Van Dusen grandchildren, as do some of my family members, include my sister who lives here in Skokie, Illinois. Before becoming a politician, George Van Dusen earned a Bachelor's of Arts degree from the University of Detroit and also a Master of Arts and a PhD from Loyola University. My sister's alma mater, actually. He served as a trustee in the village of Skokie from 1984 until he was appointed mayor in January of 1999. While a trustee, he did serve as the village's designated appointee and delegate to the Northwestern Municipal Conference, NWMC, and in 2007, he served as the president for the organization. He is currently the chairman of the Solid Waste Agency of the Northern Cook County, and also is a member of several government-related boards. Van Dusen was the director of suburban operations for the U.S. Congressman Sidney Yates in 1973 until the congressman's retirement in 1999. From 1999 to 2022, I should say, he taught U.S. history and government as an adjunct faculty member of Oakton College, Community College in Skokie, where my son has actually began his first semester here, his first year in college. The mayor is the author of two books, Clear It with Sid, Sidney R. Yates, and 50 Years of Presidents, Pragmatism, and also Public Service, which was published in 2019, and also, unfortunately for the White Sox fan, the Detroit Tiger Encyclopedia in 2002. The mayor is a member of the Temple Bet Emet. Mr. Mayor, it is good to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you and to see you again. And all of the residents of the village of Skokie, I appreciate the chance to have a conversation with you this evening.
And that's it, Mr. Mayor. You know, with now almost 15 days that are left before the Tuesday, November 8th midterm elections, I did want to kind of bring you by and discuss and take some of your thoughts and talk through some of the topics and issues of concern to our local voters. With that said, I do want to lead off with what happened today. News story, unfortunately, again, another school shooting took place in St. Louis. I wanted your thoughts on these school shootings, Mr. Mayor. At the same time, what is Skokie Village doing, and how are you working with the police department and other community members in order to be able to ensure that our schools are safe here?
The tragedy at the Central Visual and Performing Arts High School in St. Louis is another great tragedy. Two students were killed. My understanding is that the perpetrator also lost his life, and there were seven people who also were injured in this tragedy. It's something that I think as a nation we have got to confront, going all the way back to Columbine over a decade ago. Here in Skokie, our police work with all of the schools to try and ensure that they are all set up with security and that they are prepared, God forbid, anything like this should ever befall us. It's something everybody has got to be aware of, and none of us can think it can't happen to us. One of the things that our schools and our police department put a priority on is the safety of our children. My granddaughter is in the first grade at a local grammar school. My wife and I take care of her Thursday afternoons. And when I go over to pick her up, I'm not allowed in the school. I call the school, tell them who I am and that I'm there to pick up Zoe Van Dusen. And they bring her out, and then I have to sign a document attesting to who I am. These are the kinds of protocols that unfortunately our schools are going through today. But as we can see again in St. Louis and before that elsewhere, it's the kind of thing we must do. And I might point out that even in the village, we've gone through active shooter drills. It's a tragedy that this is happening in our country. But if anybody thinks that anybody is a danger, they should let either the school know or let the Skokie Police Department know so action can be taken and a tragedy can be averted. My hope is that we all will work together to protect our children and our teachers and our administrators and everybody else who makes our schools work so well. We have excellent schools, and it's important that when parents part with their kids every day, that they feel confident that everything humanly possible is being done by the police and by all of the schools to provide protection. And it means that we all have to be patient. I get a little impatient on Thursdays when I'm picking up my granddaughter and I have to stand and wait for them to be able to bring her out. But it's important, and I understand that. And I think parents do too. But my heart goes out to the parents and the students at Central Visual and Performing Arts High School in St. Louis. It's an unspeakable tragedy that everybody has gone through there.
No, Mr. Mayor, it is. Our prayers are with the parents of those children that lost their life, and it's difficult. I know that I've taken some courses in the active shooter programs. You're never going to have the perfect answer. Majority of the shooters do come from the same school. Unfortunately, they already know what the active shooter process is. It was almost like me bringing an enemy, into my compound, showing him my drills to counter them, and then having him have an opportunity to know exactly how to foil me. But it is an issue that we are dealing with across the board. It's not just here in Skokie; it's everywhere else. And unfortunately, there's multiple issues that have to be addressed, and sometimes it takes both federal and local working together to be able to get to an answer to hopefully reduce those. And I'm very confident that my kids are safe and secure when they go to the Skokie schools. Especially, I got to tell you, Mr. Mayor, I do know that the Skokie police are a great, police force, and that the state of the Arch Dispatch Center that exists here in Skokie. I do know about the latter because the former mayor of Lincolnwood, Mayor Barry Bass, actually a close friend of mine, had contracted the 911 services. So my question for you would be, what is the key from your perspective to having a well-trained police force, especially in light of what is happening with crime today, and more importantly, using the 911 dispatch as a income generator for the village of Skokie?
Well, we do contract with Lincolnwood, as you point out, but it also, I think, represents the cooperation between all of the municipalities. There is an emergency response system that is set up between Skokie and Lincolnwood in the case of 911. But there's also a greater system among several of the municipalities. Our police chiefs, our deputies, our commanders meet frequently on a formal and an informal basis with their counterparts in all of the adjoining municipalities, so that if there ever is any kind of tragedy, we can all work together. For example, Niles North and Niles West are not just Skokie schools. They are schools with which students come from Lincolnwood, Morton Grove, Niles, even some come from Glenview. And the point is that we all need to cooperate and work together. One of the things that we've emphasized with our particular police department is the importance of good training. Our police are trained in mental health. They're trained in active shooter responses. Our patrols are out on the street, patrolling the entire village throughout the day and night. And the 911 calls are very important. I can't emphasize enough the importance that if somebody sees something, say something. If you think somebody is doing something they should not be doing, or there's some kind of suspicious activity, call 911. Who knows more about their neighborhood than we do? You know your neighborhood, I know mine. We all know our neighbors. We know what kinds of activity goes on in our neighborhoods. And it's important that we call 911, even if it's something very innocent. In my neighborhood, I remember one night I was going out walking the dog, and there was somebody parked in the neighborhood. I had never seen the person before. The car was new. And when I came back about a half hour later, the car was still parked there. So I just, when I got home, I picked up the phone, called 911. One of the patrol cars simply stopped by. It turns out it was simply a realtor waiting for a client to come by. And the realtor said, I'm going to tell my client that somebody in this neighborhood called 911. What a great service. And in fact, it turns out that client did buy the house. I'm not so sure it was the phone call that did it, but the importance there is the system is set up to try and aid all of our neighborhoods. And it's important that we take advantage of it. Our police are trained. They'll be polite, but they also will make sure that we're all protected and that our neighborhoods are as safe as possible. There is crime.
No, there's crime, Mr. Mayor, and I myself, I could tell you even today, my next door neighbor who's elderly called me because there was a suspicious individual, walking around her garage in the alley, and this was a person that should not have been here. And I know in the past I've had where we've left 15 minutes after we've left, somebody's rang the doorbell, um, uh, and I've told my kids don't open the door. And it's been 2 hours past on weekends when they're supposed to solicit around your house. So I've called a non-emergency number, and again, they've sent out the squad car to follow up to see who the individual is. So Skokie does a good job as far as neighbors helping each other, and does a pretty good job as far as making sure they get those officers on the spot to at least address the issue to make sure that there's not going to be a crime possibly committed.
Yeah, I can tell you an interesting story. This is a pre-COVID story, but woman was home and she saw somebody suspicious. I think it was across the street. She called her husband in Milwaukee. He was there on business for the day. He called the Skokie Police Department, and our guys went out and apprehended a burglar in the process of trying to enter a home, simply because somebody called, and we were able to get a couple squad cars there within a minute, actually. And we apprehended the burglar. He was arrested and arraigned. But it was a resident who called. I mean, I thought it was kind of interesting. She called her husband in Milwaukee, and he's the one who called us. But we all have to be aware that these kinds of things happen, and we can, in many cases, prevent them or at least aid the police. The police can't be everywhere all the time, but you and I and all of our fellow residents can be on the lookout and I think help each other out.
Mr. Mayor, I do want to ask some other questions. Sticking to what happened with the schools, I know that the schools have suffered. There was a report that just came up recently nationally showing how the scores of students have dropped. Some will argue it was COVID related, others will say it wasn't. But the national report card really shows that our students are not doing well at all. And I do know, even when in my own family, I know that it was very difficult for my kids to do homeschooling. I had 4 kids in 3 different schools, and it was absolutely, you literally had to stay home and manage the process. Sometimes the internet capability wasn't there for them to be able to work. Sometimes it was just trying to manage that system internal. What is it that you have seen when it comes to the Skokie schools? Speaking to the principals here and the community members, as to try to make sure that what is nationally affecting our children doesn't have any type of effect here in Skokie moving forward. What are you doing, or what are the trends you're seeing that you're able to maybe address the issues of what the national report stated?
Well, I think I have not read the national report, but I've heard the news report summarizing it. I will try and take a look at the report itself. I don't think there's any question that COVID certainly has had an effect on our children. I see it with my granddaughter, my grandson, who is a little older and a student at Oakton Community College, have all been affected by it. It's going to take a concerted effort by the schools and by the parents and the grandparents and all of us to work with the kids to help them get back to where they were and to make up any ground that that was missing because of the homeschooling. Um, it's been a very difficult period that I think we've all had to live through. It's been difficult on us emotionally. The stress is certainly measurable, and the parents trying to navigate educating their children and taking care of the daily chores that all households require, and then at the same time trying to find some time for themselves. But I think what we need is a lot of involvement of the parents in the education of their children. I have a lot of faith in the Skokie schools, the public schools, as well as the private schools. I talked to a number of the principals, particularly the superintendents, and I know how concerned they are. And I think that they are paying as close attention as they possibly can to remedial kinds of activities that the children require. This evening, I was watching a report by a national educator interpreting the report, and she even went so far as to say, maybe this year we should think about kids going to summer school and not taking the summers off. I don't know. I'm not an educator. I retired this last semester from Oakton Community College, but I do know from my own teaching how difficult it was. I taught virtually for about a year and a half, and I'm not the most tech savvy human being. I managed to get the students through it, but there was something missing, and that was the human contact. And I noticed something peculiar in my last semester of teaching. The students really wanted to be there, and they were really good students. They did well. But what I noticed was they weren't having the interaction with each other that my previous classes had had. One of the things I always enjoyed about teaching was trying to impart a little bit of knowledge of history or American government. I taught both. But it was also seeing the students interacting with each other, forming friendships, and at times getting into arguments over class discussions. That was missing. And I think our students are only now beginning to get readjusted to being in the classroom themselves. Now we have to figure out, how do we begin to catch them up on the academic learning that they may have lost? And that's going to
Mr.
take
Mayor,
considerable action.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for you. With the code money that was initially given to the states, and I don't know how much was trickled down to what you could have used here in the village, is there anything there that would allow you as a mayor to be able to maybe designate some of that money to families that would like to be able to maybe get a tutor to be able to help catch up their students to where the fallback was possibly? And I do know if our viewers are not aware, Skokie schools do still, even the public schools, score high nationally. And, you know, if you could give the viewers a little bit as far as where we are nationally when it comes to our high schools here in Skokie, and also possibly, again, the question that I initially asked, Was there any money that was given that could be used, that COVID money, that possibly could be helping those students catch up, with possibly covering for tutors?
Not so much for tutors per se, but indirectly we have. The part of the money that did come to the village of Skokie has gone to not-for-profit organizations that work with schools, work with clients who have been affected by COVID, perhaps addiction or some other kind of problem. In fact, it's interesting that you bring the subject up. I got an email from one of the superintendents while I was on my way this evening to get hooked up to you. And she was asking if she could get a letter of support from me for a grant that her school district wants to apply for. And of course, I told her she'll have the letter within the next couple days. I've already begun to draft the letter. I've emphasized to all of our legislators at the federal level, as well at the state level, the importance of appropriating additional funds for education. And I've been pleased by the response that I've gotten from them. I think they do understand that the schools are in need of additional funding. And I was happy to see in the bipartisan bill that was passed, I think it was about 2 months ago, there was a substantial amount of funding for education. I'm hoping that our representatives in both the state legislature and in the U.S. Congress will continue to support education. And I can promise you that I'll continue to work on that. I try as best I can to work with all of our schools. We have 6 grammar schools in Skokie. They're all or partially in Skokie. Plus, we have Oakton Community College. And then, of course, the Niles Township High Schools, Niles North and Niles West. So it takes a little bit of effort to work with all of them, but I think they would tell you that whenever I've been called upon to be helpful, that I've done my very best to be helpful, and I will continue to do that.
Mr. Mayor, I do want to kind of touch upon what COVID did. It wasn't just affecting our students. It did affect, of course, the economy across the board. And I know now we're dealing with the issues of inflation. Even pumpkins here in Skokie have been affected by it. But my question to you would be in this case, when I was looking at the books and what the fiscal like for Skokie, I was surprised that it was still growth even during COVID. And now we're hearing even some bigger name stores possibly coming to Skokie, and looking at some of the repositioning of other stores that were in Old Orchard. In your words, what is your belief that makes Skokie such an attractive location for keeping business in the village? And I guess my other question would be, what has been vital when it came to this continued economic growth for Skokie over the past 10 years?
Well, I think the village's fiscal integrity is one of the things that helps. The village of Skokie, excuse me, has not increased its portion of the property tax levy in 30 years. Let me repeat that. We have not increased the village of Skokie's property tax levy since 1990. In 1990, the property tax levy was $15.4 million. That levy remains the same, $15.4 million per year. So we have not increased it even for the cost of living. And part of that is because our businesses need all of the help that they can possibly get from us. Old Orchard Shopping Center is doing reasonably well right now. In fact, by the end of this year, Old Orchard will have signed a minimum of 10 new leases, could be more than that. They're in various negotiations.
Yeah.
Now, why does Skokie have not just Old Orchard, but Village Crossing Shopping Center on the south side? Both of them managing to do fairly well. I think it's because we have found a way to provide an atmosphere in which businesses feel that the village has their back. And it takes long-term planning. This is not by accident. In 2005, Pharmacia Pharmaceutical came to the village and told us that because of their merger with Pfizer, the old GD Searle laboratory would be closing. And they asked me what I wanted. And I told them there were three things: jobs, and green space. They provided that. Forest City Enterprises bought the property. They invested $150 million into that property, demolished 10 buildings, made it into a neighborhood park atmosphere. The village of Skokie contributed $10 million in infrastructure improvement, and the state of Illinois contributed $15 million in infrastructure improvements. Because of that long-range vision, we now have 20 companies and 1,600 plus jobs that are well-paying science jobs. That science park has provided the hub for economic growth in that entire area. Sketchbook Brewery, Ignite Adult Gaming, all along Lincoln and Oakton and Lincoln Avenue. You'll see new businesses are opening continuously. Just at our last village board meeting, we approved a facade grant for a new downtown luncheon cafe that will be opening very soon. It takes long-term vision to do this kind of thing. Because of this, and because we have a professional staff that persisted through COVID, we broke ground in August on a new hotel that will be opening a year from this coming December on Oakton at the southern end of the research park. That was part of the long-range vision of the science park. And we're continuing to add jobs and businesses. And they're international. There's Veta Pharma from Ravensburg, Germany, Lanzatech, which moved its corporate headquarters from New Zealand to Skokie, Illinois, because they saw an opportunity here to not only gain business in the Midwest, but to establish an international presence. And you can't believe how happy these businesses are that we're fulfilling our vision of opening a new hotel in the downtown area. So it requires that kind of progress serves as a stimulus to all of the businesses in the village of Skokie. So we have two shopping centers when most municipalities are closing down and seeing their shopping centers get shuttered because of the competition with the internet providers. But we have managed to figure out a way to have two shopping centers doing well, opening new stores, reimagining itself, and having a science and technology park thriving. Now, that's in addition to all of the other new businesses. Go along the Tui Avenue corridor. That has happened in the last 10 years. And it was a result of the village of Skokie reimagining our zoning in that entire area. So there's been a lot of progress in the last 10 years. And I think it's got to do with the long range vision of the village council and our professional economic development staff.
Mr. Mayor, it seems like the development in Skokie has appeared, and based on what you're saying, you're laying out the facts of how money is being generated, and it's affecting the real estate low value. I should say not low values, but the tax on real estate is low because of it. Like you said, it does need some well-planned example of it would be long-term. Even the Optima condos that were built and are now looking at possibly even supporting Niles North, having effects on Niles North and what it's able to generate economically. Can you give us an idea of, I know you kind of mentioned it, but how do you get creative when it comes to generating these type of revenues on these particular projects? Like this, with the priority of benefiting even our school systems?
Well, I think once again, it goes back to an economic philosophy. Our philosophy is to give our residents maximum premium service. We have a great police department, nationally recognized fire department. Our public works department is fully accredited nationally. We have a board certified health department, and we're only one of 5 municipalities in the state of Illinois that has a board certified health department. And we have a full-time economic development staff. Our philosophy is to generate as much sales tax as we can. A little secret that, Sargis, you and I will share, but it's only between us. 2/3 of the sales tax generated by Westfield Old Orchard Shopping Center comes from outside of the village of Skokie. So that means that people outside the village of Skokie were coming, they're enjoying the social activity at Westfield Old Orchard, they're enjoying the variety of shopping. That sales tax rebounds to the village, and we are then able to stabilize our portion of the property tax, as I mentioned before, and at the same time, provide stable and transparent government and the kinds of services that people of the village of Skokie deserve. And everybody should remember that we look upon all of this as investment.
Yeah.
When the village leverages money with the state of Illinois, for example, or the county of Cook, to resurface Old Orchard Road or resurface Skokie Boulevard or resurface Gulf Road, or put in all new lighting and turning bays, none of it very glamorous. But those are the kinds of amenities that make a shopping center successful. Now, you have to have a good partner. Westfield has been a good partner with the village of Skokie. We have worked very closely with Westfield. We listen to them, try and get an idea of what it is they want, and vice versa. They listen to us as well. Old Orchard has generated somewhere in the neighborhood of $41 million in the last 15 years that has come back to the community. And all of that money is reinvested into police, fire, public works, health, and future economic development. But what gets lost in all of this is our investment in small business. During COVID, we helped out various small businesses in the village with not huge grants, but small grants, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, as much as we could afford to do to try and help them get along. We also changed some of our codes. You'll notice that there's much more outdoor dining these days. Our health director had always been very hesitant about outdoor dining. But because of COVID, we needed to relax our rules, let restaurants find a way to save themselves while we underwent this challenging time. And they did. We lost very few restaurants. We lost a couple, but very few during COVID. And I think it's because of the partnerships with our restaurants and the bars and the other small businesses that we've built up over the years. We have a good working relationship with the Skokie Chamber of Commerce. And our health department, of course, does health inspections, and our fire and police meet and talk to businesses on a regular basis. These kinds of relationships really are important in times of crisis. And I think that really showed through during COVID. And I'm not saying we're out of it yet. There's still an epidemic, but I think we're all doing much better today than we were doing 2 years ago. We have our challenges, yes, but I think with professional government, long-range vision, and partnerships with the business community, the educational community, the not-for-profit community, the mental health community, all of the different sectors of our village, we're going to get through this. And when COVID first came to Skokie, I made a promise to the residents of the village that we would do everything within our power to help the village get through this epidemic. And I think we fulfilled that promise. We were the first municipality in the state of Illinois to do contact tracing. And we established the gold standard for setting up a vaccination clinic. When vaccinations became available, we were one of the first municipalities to have its own clinic, and we distributed 40,000 vaccinations, not including the schools. Our health department, with its professional nursing staff and the doctors, et cetera, went out to every school, public and private, and offered vaccinations for those students whose parents wanted them to get vaccinated. That's the kind of planning that I think the village of Skokie stands for. And I'm proud to stand with the residents of the village and our staff and say, we haven't done it perfectly. We've made some mistakes. We'll learn from those mistakes. But I think we're coming out on the right side. And our economy needs some work, but we're doing better than I think would have been expected otherwise.
No, it seems like, as you pointed out, Mr. Mayor, Skokie has always, I know, has had great services and amenities, to include the police and fire, as you mentioned them, at least twice a week, garbage pickup. And I do know that based on what you're saying, it does reflect a collaboration of government and also the appointed commissioners. If it wasn't working, we would be in a bad position. Trust me, I would let you know on the show here. But can you give us a little bit of an insight on? I know you have a couple of master plans out there, but the master plans which have enabled the growth as down 2 Avenue, as you had mentioned, through McCormick to the Crossroads Shopping Center. Is there anything else that we missed as far as that development plan is concerned?
I don't think so. We are continuing to work every day with small business as well as medium-sized and big business. We are in the process of developing a sustainability plan for the village of Skokie. The Sustainable Commission will be delivering its report to the village about the middle of next month. And then the village board will be devoting an entire meeting to that plan, a question and answer discussion. And that will be part of the village's long-range vision in doing our part on climate change and sustainability. In addition to that, I want to point out that the village has 15 boards and commissions, approximately 250 residents around these commissions. They volunteer their time in helping the village, advising the village, and formulating long-range plans. Could be plans on beautification, sustainability, economic development, health. Our Board of Health, for example, is beginning the early stages of doing a revision of our long-term health plan. The Board of Health is made up of professional medical professionals, doctors, nurses, technicians, Some are active in practice, some are retired. But it was out of their efforts that we created the Medical Reserve Corps. Some of your viewers might remember in 2008, 2009, the H1N1 virus scare. It hit some parts of the world very badly. But out of it, one of the things we decided to do was to prepare. What would we do? Would we be prepared for an epidemic? God forbid there ever would be any such thing. And we decided in 2010 to begin setting up a medical reserve corps. Volunteers from the medical profession who would volunteer their time, help us create a plan for what we would do should there be an epidemic. And wouldn't you know it, that's exactly what happened with COVID. But when it did happen, we were ready to do contact tracing way before anybody had ever even heard the phrase. And that was because we had these medical professionals, as well as our director of our health department and all of the professionals on staff who helped us formulate that plan. So we will go back, take a look at what we did well during COVID, maybe some missteps that took place, and that, God forbid, we're ever hit with anything like that again. We will be better prepared even then than we were this time.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the breakdown as far as basically where we were and where we are today. Much appreciate the questions. I do have one last question for you. I know we're running short on time, but I thought it was important to cover a lot of the information that you discussed. Last week, I was outside working in my front yard, and as we're getting close to elections, I didn't know that there were 3 referendums that are going to be on the Skokie ballot. So if you're going as a Skokie resident to vote, you're going to see these referendums. And this is a door hanger that was given to me by the young lady who was walking, basically putting these on the doors. And it is Skokie Alliance for Electoral Reform. And from what I'm reading back here on the back side of this, it seems like we have a functioning government currently, and there's a capture from their site. But as you said, the governments are not perfect. You got to make some changes. But this would holistically change the entire government of Skokie. I wanted to get your thoughts on the referendum, the 3 points of it, how we got to this referendum or these referendums, and basically, what's your perspective on them?
Well, there are 3. One would provide for staggered elections. At the present time, we elect 6 trustees, the mayor and clerk, village-wide, and we do it every 4 years. And that way, the village can formulate long-range plans, because we're in office for 4 years, and it takes time to be able to formulate plans and bring them to fruition. Nonpartisan elections is the next item on the ballot. And this would provide that candidates would not be identified by a party or any other kind of political affiliation. For example, on the ballot, when I'm running for election, it would be George Van Dusen. Next to my name, it would say mayor, and then the Skokie Caucus Party. I'm a proud member of the Skokie Caucus Party. We have given ourselves to professional government. We created the council manager form of government. I'm proud to be on the ballot identified. Why wouldn't somebody want to be identified? There's a danger if you're not identified. The papers, both the Sun-Times and Tribune, have run articles on how small groups have been able to take over boards of education, library boards across the country for nothing more than ideological reasons, far right, far left. And it's because these elections are nonpartisan. And quite frequently, they're low voter turnout. Now, it's true, Skokie's voter turnout in municipal elections is low. As a matter of fact, every municipality in Cook County, I think it's 90 different municipalities, have low voter turnout for their municipal elections. There is not one that has high voter turnout. Instead of disrupting and uprooting the system, my suggestion would be to change the date of municipal elections to coincide with either the gubernatorial or the presidential elections. That's what they did in Maryland. In Baltimore's rate of participation in their elections went up from 13% to 60%. That is what we should do. And then the third item is wards, or they're calling it district, but it's wards. Do we really need to divide the village of Skokie into wards where there will be competition for scarce resources? And this kind of competition and fighting between wards, I want my ward to get this, and if your ward gets that, then I've got to get it too. That kind of competition will inhibit long-range planning. Very simply put, if it ain't broken, why fix it? The village of Skokie, I tried to explain this evening, has done very well for itself. And I think in large part, that's because we have a good electoral system and we have managed to deliver for the residents of Skokie. So I would ask people to vote no on these three referenda and support changing the date of the municipal election to coincide with either the gubernatorial or the presidential election.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to get your thoughts on it, but we'll see how it turns out. The referendums are now on the ballot, so residents can go and either vote yes or no on the ballots, and your recommendation is to vote no. The ward council
they're the last thing on the ballot. So you've got to persist. You've got to get through the federal offices, the state offices, the judges, and then you'll get down to the village of Skokie's three referenda.
So, Mr. Mayor, I guess in this case, if you're a voter and you're impatient, you don't want to deal with the referendums and you just leave them off. If the other side votes yes, what is the percentage that they need to be able to pass a referendum that will completely change
50% plus one.
50 plus one. So
you need 50% plus one. And that is of those people voting on the referendum. This isn't 50% of people voting. If people don't go
Okay, I
down
understood.
and they skip it, only those who vote on the referendum count. And I'm
So
very concerned about that.
the people of the Skokie Alliance for Electoral Reform are going to have their folks vote because they've put this
Yes, they
together.
will.
So if you're a resident and you choose just to skip and not to vote, you're actually delivering a victory to the ones who want to see a change. And
That's right.
I know that wards are listed in their documentation here. One ward in Chicago is almost 60,000 people, and if you're gonna put six of those wards here, that means you're gonna have to divide it into almost 10,000 because the village of Skokie is small, so it may not fit like a cookie cutter that it would fit if it was an issue that you were dealing with Chicago itself. I'm not getting even bothered to ask about combining the four district trustees with two at-large trustees because we just don't have the time, Mr. Mayor, and it's it is what it is. It's on a referendum. So if you want to vote no, go in and vote no.
And
Go
please
ahead, Mr.
read
Mayor.
the literature that's coming out. We're doing our best to explain to people the reasons why it makes sense to keep the system that we have that has been so successful. But stick with the ballot, please, and get to the very end. And you can very quickly just check off no, no, no. And then you can get your little badge saying I voted.
Well, look,
But Sargis,
regardless,
thank you very much for having me tonight.
no, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, regardless, any change you make at any given time, changing your toothpaste will affect you. So if you're going to go in and change the entire government of Skokie, everything that you had kind of laid out based on the economic growth, schools, handling the COVID issue even prior to COVID, being prepared for it, I mean, it will affect it all. So, that's a decision for the voters to make. And, again, don't forget, early voting has begun already as of today. The Skokie Courthouse is where folks can go and vote. And, of course, general election is just 15 days away on 8th of November 2022. Mr. Mayor, we've gone over time, but I thought it was important to bring you in here to talk to you about it. I'm a resident of Skokie, so whatever changes take place will affect me. Your last words and last thoughts before we sign off.
Well, the village of Skokie is a wonderful place to rear a family, to work, and to enjoy. We have great parks. We have a great library, a model library for the country. And the village of Skokie's services are among the very best. It's been the pleasure and the honor of a lifetime to be able to serve on the village board and to be the mayor of the village of Skokie. I want to thank Sargis, you and all of your staff and all of your listeners, regardless of whether you agree with me or disagree with me. Thank you very much for your participation in the life of the village of Skokie. And regardless of the referendum, we're going to progress and move forward. Thank you, Sargis. I appreciate the opportunity you've extended me.
No, definitely. Much appreciated, Mr. Mayor. You just say it was between me and you. I know that the Bears are playing today, so it might be just me and you for now. But we'll
They were
definitely
winning at
share the
halftime,
video.
I think.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, you're
I
not
don't
supposed
know.
to give me the. I was avoiding hearing the hearing the final
Well, I don't
score.
know
That's
how they
okay,
did
Mr.
in the
Mayor.
second half. Go
Well
Bears.
said. Much appreciated, Mr. Mayor. And look, for our audience, just so you know, I mean, everybody knows that I'm a Republican. I ran as a Republican in my congressional district. Mr. Mayor is registered as a Democrat, but we can have a conversation, folks, on the issues and topics that affect all of us and our families. Civil conversations and see what we need to do to be able to readjust or make changes if need be. With that said, folks, go out and vote. You have to vote. As I said in the yesterday's Australian GOP event, dead people vote, unfortunately, in our state. I think you, as a live individual, should be able to walk in and vote and do what is best for your village, for your district, and for your family, most importantly. I also want to make sure that our audiences know that if they use our QR code, go to the village of Skokie, they'll be able to get to the mayor's office. And if they have any information, they want to talk a little bit more about the referendum, they can go ahead and basically call him and schedule appointments. We're 15 days away. Also, for our audiences out there, Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you knew, but I have a 501c3. We raised money. We established it during the Assyrian genocide between 2014 and 2017. We do raise money for the Assyrian Christians to be able to support them. And United Assyrian Appeal is actually here in the Skokie area, registered 501c3. And this year, we're also helping with the South Sudanese Christians because with the war that has taken place, a lot of them has been displaced or in refugee camps in Kenya, and that's one of the missions we're trying to help with. Also, much appreciations for Fred and the Sim production team. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be able to have great guests here and be able to have these type of discussions. And with that said, thank you very much for Sim production for our ability to be able to bring guests like the mayor to our show. Mr. Mayor, and go enjoy the Chicago Bears, and we'll see how the referendum turns out. We'll bring you back again, hopefully next year sometime to talk about the local elections. With that said, God bless,
Thank
and there's
you.
new paradigms.
God bless Sargon.